Year after year, 90% of the budget, maybe even 95% of the budget really doesn't change much. We're doing the same things every year. We're just trying to do it more efficiently and do a better job always. So most of it is just to ask the questions a lot of times about the activity and if anything has changed, if we're adding anybody and those kind of things. And so most of it was just kind of going through the routine, but we kind of went over the fact that the revenues have increased a little bit. Property tax went up 3.2% and TIF district went up 11%. That was good. That's reflective of the activity that's going on downtown. And then sales tax went up a little over 3%. So those are good because inflation is virtually zero right now, and that means that we're maybe having a little bit of expansion of economic activity, which is we can use for some of the needs that come with those sort of things that happen. We did talk a little bit about doing some long-term planning for the city. We've planned some of the parks specifically, and we've of course planned downtown. Went through quite an effort, but the overall town itself, we haven't really done any planning for years, and so council and was interested in some of the council was maybe getting started on some of that, and so we're putting a just an overall budget number of $100,000 towards that effort as we go into the future. Whether we use what percentage of that this year, we really don't know. We want to just get started. For example, when we did the Highway 11 extension going by Lowe's and Walmart there, that had been on a plan that had been drawn up more than 20 years ago, and of course we knew right where we wanted that to go. So if you do in the next 15, 20, 25 years get a spurt of growth, you can make some pretty serious mistakes in terms of where things ought to be and not should be and stuff like that. So this would be comprehensive and asking at first really an inventory of not only of all the economic and planning factors, but also of who we are and who we want to be. We also discussed the fact that last year we made some pretty large changes, and this year we're implementing them, and one of them was that we have started the process of engineering a complete overhaul of the wastewater plant. It's estimated to be about a $14 million overhaul, which is a huge number for a city of this size, and we want to make sure we do all of that right. And so we're raising slowly the wastewater rates. It'll be 2% increase this year generally, so that when we get to the large payment that's going to come with that debt, we'll be there. And meanwhile, with the money that we get from these increases, we're using that to minimize or lessen the amount that we'll borrow. Talked a little bit about the $1.2 million we're spending on designing the wastewater plant, and that we originally calculated we might need a couple $100,000 of that to come from the loan, but that the enterprise fund did well this year as far as the cost being less on the three departments, and so hopefully we won't have to borrow the last part of that. So that's some of the benefit of the increased rates. And then we also talked about how last year we raised the street work reconstruction from 1.3 to 1.8 million. So, and the biggest part of that is allowing us not only to do the 500,000 of overlay that we try to do every year, but to increase the rebuilds from 300,000 to 1.2 million. And that even though this year I told the council we did pretty much only overlays at the end of last year, and then this year $1 million, 1.1 million of overlays, that we've started our first rebuild in this new period of time of increased money on Rockdale Road, and that will be followed by other road reconstructions as well as overlays. So we kind of talked about how that's fitting into the budget for this year. And other than that, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what we did with the budget this year.
At the small meeting that I attended, the very brief presentation, there seemed to be a lot of council interest in sidewalks. Does the new budget, does it address that, or is that something in the future planning area?
What I mentioned in the budget was that the work the state is doing on Broadway and Gilmer kind of reveals, well, pretty straightforwardly reveals of what sad shape our sidewalks and curbs and gutters are in We really don't have a really good handle on being able to redo and get our sidewalks in a point where that we'd all be somewhat happy about it. I kind of waxed a little philosophical at that budget about that little meeting, talking about how we as human beings respond well when boundaries are clear, and curbs form the boundary between what's private and what's public. And when it's dysfunctional, as many of our streets are dysfunctional in terms of our curbs, it really does cause more stress for people as they go about their lives. And sidewalks are the same way. It's really the boundary between pedestrians and cars. And when you don't have sidewalks and people need to get around on foot, it just doesn't work. And so what I said was that when we increased the money to 1.8 million, 600 of that is for overlays, where you're just going in and putting a 2-inch overlay. You grind off the old surface and put 2 inches of overlay in. And then there's about 1.1 for 1.2 for rebuilds, where you're going in and redoing the whole road section, going down to the base and coming up. But then there's a couple $100,000 for miscellaneous. And what that means is sometimes you'll go in there and do an overlay, but there are some curbs that need to be fixed, maybe some sidewalks. And we did that on Davis Street, right below Houston, where we did a few things in there before we overlaid it. And that would be the miscellaneous money that if we wanted to do some sidewalk work, it would come out of that. And I've been here almost 20 years now, and I have made the pitch year by year that, why not put a little money aside every year and do some sidewalks? And because if you did that year by year, 10 years would go by, and you'd have some newer sidewalks for people to walk on, and you could identify parts of the town where it would be more important than perhaps others, that in terms of people getting somewhere on foot. It's been a benefit on Houston Street. I come in there on Houston Street coming to work in the morning, and there are always people walking along those sidewalks on Houston. So if you build them, people will use them. So perhaps in the future we can maybe identify a little bit more exactly where we can do some of that stuff.